Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Rover and Zest Enhancements, DAYUSE Functionality and More, presented by Stayntouch Implementations Consultant James Lee. I'm your host, Justin Derisi, the Customer Marketer here at Stayntouch. Today's presentation will cover a number of different product enhancements from Rover version 5.11. We actually have a lot of content today, so we're going to be pushing the time limit pretty closely. So first, we're going to go over some of the card merge features for guests, TA, and corporate cards. We're going to spend a lot of time on Rover's new day and hourly use functionality. So now you can reserve rooms on an hourly basis and a day basis. We're also going to discover new product enhancements for the room diary. We're also going to look at some upgrades to Zest Station, including exclusion by payment type and email and location capture for room-ready alerts. Finally, we're going to review some other enhancements. This will include rate sequences, card merge functionality, deposit rules, and changes to the group date extension logic. Finally, we will have a short Q&A. As always, you can ask questions in the questions tab that's in the middle of your control panel. We will answer them at the end of the presentation in the order that they're received. If we don't get to your questions, I will provide my email address, and you're more than welcome to email me after the presentation, and I'll try to answer your questions. So that's all I have for right about now. I'm going to switch this screen over, and James, you can begin.
Great. And all right. Hi, everyone. My name is James Lee. I'm Implementations Consultant for Stayntouch. One of the first things we're going to talk about today is the ability to merge cards in our system. And just as a reminder, when we say cards, we actually referring to profiles. So guest cards, company cards, travel agency cards, we now have the ability to merge those. To start with, I'm going to look at our guest cards. And in my training hotel here, I'm going to go to my main menu. And under front desk, I do have an option here for guest. With guest, this allows me to look for specific profiles here. I could look for, say, my own profile, which I know I have a lot here. When I look for James Lee, it's going to show up all my existing profiles. From up here at the top left, you have this little toggle switch between view and merge. If I want to move to the merge functionality, I just click on this little tab here, and this will bring up some checkbox next to the reservations. And now I can come through here and check all the profiles that I would like to actually merge. And if you'll notice over here on the top right, it's giving me my primary one and my additional ones right here. The primary one is the one I selected first, but I can change the primary to whatever profile I prefer. On the first one here, I have it selected. I verify the merge. When it verifies, it's checking for a couple of things. It's checking to make sure that this guest has no future reservations. The primary profile can have future reservations, but the cards that have that you're merging with the primary cannot have any future reservations attached to it. Once it validates that information, it gives me a message that I am okay to merge. I merge my cards, and that will merge all three of those guest cards into one. All statistics from the existing profiles will show up as the one primary profile, so we'll move all those statistics, revenue history, reservation history, all of that will merge into that primary guest card. Moving on, we're going to talk about company cards and how we merge that. If I go into my main menu here and go into revenue management and company TA cards, and let's say I want to take a look at my booking.com profiles, and I type in book, and I notice that I have book.com, I have booking, and I have booking.com. Well, I want to merge all these into one. I can actually click on the merge here. And again, I'm going to select the profiles, the company cards, and I have my primary one selected as booking.com. I'm going to verify the merge. Now with company cards, it's actually going to check for a little bit more information here. It's going to also check to make sure that it has no reservations attached to the company card in the future. It's also going to make sure that there are no AR accounts created. If you do have an AR account created on the non-primary company card, it will not let you merge that. If it is a travel agency card, it's going to check for any outstanding commissions. And if it has a company card or a travel agency, it's going to look for contracted rates. So if any of that stuff is present on the non-primary company card, it will not let you merge that. At this point, it is telling me I am okay to merge these. I merge cards, and now I just have my booking.com. Now, similar to your guest cards, all the statistics, all the revenue, all the historic information will all merge into that primary card. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is our day use and hourly use functionality. We have rolled out some brand new functions that can help your hotel gather some extra revenue opportunities for those guests that might need to stay at your hotel just for a little bit, not overnight. I'm going to actually move over to my other training environment, which is the James Hotel San Francisco Airport. We have two current setups. We actually have day use and hourly use. Day use is going to be for hotels that occasionally sell day use rooms. They're not really looking to sell specific rates by the hour. It just happens on occasion. Hourly reservations or hourly use are for hotels that have regular customers that come in that would like to rent rooms by the hour. This is a great example for hotels that are close to airports. Maybe you have some guests that have some extended layovers. They want to be able to take a nap, go to a hotel, book a room for a few hours, and just stay there for a little bit. The first I want to talk about is actually day use. And actually day use is set up in my other training hotel. So I'm going to go back to the James Hotel. When you book a day use room, you can go to front desk and create a reservation like you normally would. And with your nights here, when you put it at 0, it's going to default to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but you can change that time. So let's say if they're coming in at 1 p.m. and they're going to stay till 5 p.m., I hit find room and rates. Now you can configure day use rates and you can configure multiple day use rates. So you could technically have a rate for 1 hour, a rate for 2 hours, rate for 3 hours, etc. You'll notice over here by the rate amount, I do have a red D. So that tells me that this is a day use rate and it falls under the recommended tab. If I expand this, I can see my rates, my room types that I have available, and I can move to book the reservation for a day use room. If I make this under my name, select my demographics here. And with the day use room, when you actually check the guest in, the good thing about it is it's going to post the revenue for you. So obviously, because most times room and tax will post during the end of day process, this guest will probably not be in-house during the end of day. So when you check it in, Rover will actually post the room and tax for you automatically. Get my check-in. And once I've checked in, you'll notice I now have an outstanding balance. And if I go into bill and charges, it has already been posted for me. To set up your day use rates, if I go into my settings here, and I look at my rates and I find my day use rate, under your rate details, there is a toggle switch here for day use. And this is where you can activate it. And Rover knows that this is a rate that it should populate when you have those 0 night reservations. All right, now I'm going to move over to the James Hotel San Francisco Airport where we have our hourly module set up. This is where you can actually book rooms by the hour for a specific rate. All reservations for hourly rate modules have to be done from the room diary. So if I go to front desk and go to room diary, and I have this little toggle switch up here for view and book, and I can change this over to book. Now it's going to default to look at nightly rates here, but over here on the left, I have this day-night toggle switch here. If I move it over to day, it's going to give me a time chart. So it's going to show me currently what the time is at the hotel with this red bar. This hotel is in San Francisco, so it is showing that it is 10:15 in the morning. It is waiting for me to select the time for this guest to arrive. And if I change this over to 10:30, it's going to block out 4 hours for me. Now, this is something configured for your property. You actually set up the minimum amount of time that you want to set. For my property, I have it set up as 4 hours. Additional to that, I have the ability to do incremental increases. So I can say that for an hour, it's going to be an extra amount for each hour increase. You'll notice also, even if I shorten the time that the guest is actually staying here, the rate is going to stay at $100 because $100 is the actual minimum amount for that particular room type. But you'll notice now at 2:30, it's still going to show $100, but if I extend it by 1 hour, I have incremental increase configured at my property for $20. So it's now changed to 120. I can move it to 4:30 and it's going to be 140. You can also do 15-minute incremental increases. It's going to take that amount that you configured and divide it by 4 and just add that amount. So if I move it to 4:45, it's going to add $5 to that and give me a $145 rate. The second setting that you have with your hourly rate is the ability to put a maximum amount of time that you're going to charge. For my property, I have that set up at 10 hours. So that means if the guest stays 11 hours, they're only going to be charged for 10 hours. So if I move my depart time all the way to 8:30, I have that rate at $220. That is the maximum amount the guest will have to pay for an hourly reservation. If I move it to 9:30, you'll notice it's still going to stay at that $220 rate. The other setting that we have is to determine at what time does a reservation become a nightly stay. And for my property, I have that set up at 10 p.m. That means if this reservation stays at past 10 p.m., they are in for the night. They have to pay for that nightly rate. So if I move it to 10 p.m., you'll notice it still says $220. But if I move it to 10:15, it's going to tack on that. I'm sorry, I have mine set at 11:15. If I move it to 11:15, it's going to tack on that nightly rate. Now, what happens to your hourly rate is that $100 minimum goes away, and it's only looking at $20 an hour for that point. At that point, so if I shorten my stay up to about 4 p.m. or 4:15, it's only going to look at $20 an hour up until 10 o'clock. Then at 10 o'clock, it's going to tack on the nightly rate on top of that. You actually configure what hours are determine your nightly rate, and for my hotel, I have that set up between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. That means anybody that is staying past 11 p.m. or staying before 6 a.m. are going to have to pay for that nightly rate, which I have it set up as $200. Additionally, with the nightly rate, you determine what time you allow the guests to check out. For my property, I have that set up as 11 a.m. so they can stay all the way up to 11 a.m. and it's still going to be that $200 nightly rate amount. But if they start moving past 11 a.m., they are going to have to pay for that hourly increase. So if I move it to noon, you'll see that $20 added on top of that. To book the room, it's very easy. You just click on the actual reservation here. You'll notice that it kind of makes a little movement here on that particular room number. That kind of takes it away from your availability. Nobody else can book that room at the same time. You have the option to select an additional room, so you can book 2 rooms, or you can move forward with reserving this room. At this point, I can reserve the room. It's going to ask for the guest name. I can type my name again. And if I wanted to go ahead and check this guest in, the same concept as our day use, it's going to post that room charge for you automatically. All right. If the guest decides to extend their stay, the amount difference will actually post for you automatically. So if I go back to my room diary and I look at my day use here, and I see James Lee, and let's say he wants to extend his stay a little bit, you can actually move it to another time here. You save my changes, and it's going to tell you it's going to charge an extra $40. You can apply payment. If you choose to move without rate change, it won't charge them for that extra amount, but apply payment here. And it's just prompting you to process a payment there, but if you go to your stay card, you can see now that it added an extra $40 on top of that charge. Now, if this is a module that you're interested in setting up, I highly recommend that you reach out to your client success manager, let them know that you're interested in this, and we can schedule some training time to go over this. I just want to give you a brief overview on what the rate looks like when you set up an hourly rates. Under your rate codes here, I have my hourly rate set up. With your rate details, you have this little toggle switch for hourly and nightly. When you look at your actual date range here, you'll see it looks a little bit different than your normal rate configuration. This is where you set your minimum hours. So this is where I set it to be 4-hour minimum, 10 hours max. Your checkout cutoff time and your night rate, these need to match, but this is determining what time your nightly rate starts. So this is where I have it as 11 p.m. I have it as a 6 a.m. The night rate ends, and then your checkout time for your night rate is going to be at 11 a.m. Now, based on the parameters that you set here, this will populate certain fields that you can input. This is where I put in my 4-hour minimum rate. So I'm saying if they check in at 10 a.m. for 4 hours, it's going to be 100 for standard and a 110 for deluxe. Now, you have the ability to yield your rates higher on particular peak times. If you know that there's a time where you get heavy traffic from the airport, you can set that rate a little bit higher on that particular time. Your incremental increases are actually set here. When I hit this little button here, this will give you your incremental increase for how much it is for an extra hour. This is where you set your nightly rate. So this is where I set 210 and 200 for a standard. And then this will be the hourly rate when booking in conjunction with a nightly rate. So when you have a nightly rate and it extends past that 11 a.m. checkout time, or if it's before the 11 p.m. check-in time, this is the hourly rate that will post for that. All right, so we're moving on. We're going to move into a couple of other room diary enhancements that we have. From here, if I go into my room diary, we have actually rolled out some functionality to show you when you are overbooking your hotel. This is on a nightly view, but if I choose to book here, and by the way, my training hotel is not a current date, but you'll notice if I'm looking for the 8th of the night and I click find rooms, this is showing me the rooms that I have that I can book for a nightly rate. But if I change my date to 11th, because I know I'm sold out on the 11th, and I hit find rooms here, it actually changes the view and it tells you that you're overbooking that particular room type. Based on your permission, if you have permission to overbook, you can actually click on this button here and it will take you to your reservation screen, and then you can choose shows closed rates and continue on to book. If you don't have permission to overbook, it will still say overbook on these rooms, but when you get to the reservation sales screen, it will not allow you to continue on with that reservation. A couple other things that we've rolled out with our Zest Station enhancements. We have added the ability to do to prompt the guests when rooms are not ready, to ask them how they want to be contacted to let them know that their room is ready. And I have some screenshots lined up here to show you what that's going to look like. But essentially, when there's no room for that guest to check into, this is the actual message they'll see. They will have an action option. They could choose to send an email. They can find me in a location, or they can come back later. If they select the email, it's just going to prompt the guest for the email address, and it will reach out to them over email to let them know the room is ready. If they choose to find a location, these are predetermined or configurable locations that we can set for your hotel, and they can determine if they're in the lobby, if they're in the bar, the restaurant, etc. And that way you can find them. It actually will show up as a note on the reservation, so when the room is checked in, you can go into the reservation, look at the notes, and see where the guest will be. If they select will come back later, no action is taken. It'll just check them in, and they'll come back whenever they're ready to look at that. The other option that we've added in Zest Station is the ability to exclude payment methods from being able to check in via Zest Station. When you actually do that, you'll see a message here that says select your payment method is not allowed, and you'll need to see the front desk for check-in. If you want this functionality turned on, just reach out to our customer support and they can turn that on for you. Once it's activated, you'll see a window similar to this where it shows allowed payment types, and you can move certain payment types to excluded, where they would not be allowed to check in via Zest Station. Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is rate sequence. We've rolled out some new functionality with the ability to sequence your rates when they show up. For example, at my hotel, if I take a look here and I go to front desk and create a reservation, and I hit find room and rates, and if I take a look at all my rate codes, I can see that I have a lot of rate codes here, and I see too many, to be honest. And let's say I want to clean this up a little bit. I want to streamline this a little bit and only determine certain rate codes that the agent can see, or I actually want to just change the order in which they see these rates. You can actually go into settings, and under settings, under rates, we have our rate sequence here. And you have the option here to create a custom sequence. And from here, I can add sequence, and I could change this to whatever I want to. I'll just call it custom. And add it. And once you have it there, you can manage your rates. And then from here, I can select what rates I want to show in this custom sequence. So I could show, I want my best available rate to show, and then I'll show my best available 1, and I'll show my best available 2, and then I'm going to show my AAA discount as well. And you can also change the order on which you want these to display just by clicking and dragging, and it moves the order on how you want to display that. Once you have your sequence set up the way you prefer, you can now move back over to your sequence prompt here, and I could choose to, for example, my Rover room and rate screen, I could choose to do by a custom sequence. You can also look at Rover Rate Manager. If you wanted to add that custom sequence in your Rate Manager where you do your yielding, you can do so there as well. And then you could also do in your admin rate setup on custom sequence. When you get into your rate configuration, it will sort it the way you have it in that custom sequence. At this point, once I save the changes, you'll notice now I go back into my reservation cell screen. And when I hit find room and rates, I look at my rates and I only see those 4 rate codes that I have in my sequence. Now, if you were wanting to sell all your rates still here on the screen still, that's fine, but you could still use that sequence to put in order the rate codes that you want to display. All right. For our deposit policies, we've now added the ability to schedule a deposit due at time of check-in. To set that up, you would go into your settings here. Under under rates and rules and restrictions, you have your deposit policies down here at the bottom. And I actually have one set up for full deposit due at check-in. The way you would set this up is you would put allow, your schedule down here is going to be percentage, entire stay, and you would put 100%. You could put a max number of nights, so you can put a cap on how many nights you do. But on days in advance, where we used to just have add booking and custom, we've added day of arrival. And with day of arrival, and as long as you have this box checked for exclude from auto collection, this means that the deposit will not process when the end of day runs if you are using our auto deposit functionality. When you check this guest in, you'll be prompted with the deposit screen, and you can process the deposit at that time. And the last thing we're going to cover today is some improvements that we've done in our group module. So I'm going to go into my groups here, and I'm going to look at my AT&T Executive Retreat group. Now, previously, when we would extend a date on a block, it would actually take a look at the contracted rooms that are currently in that block, and it would actually copy those numbers to the next day. A lot of clients weren't happy with that kind of logic, and so we took that into consideration and changed the way that this system does this. So now you'll see that if I move it to the 10th, I get a prompt here, and it's going to ask me if I want to extend the reservations. Now, this screen was already there previously. If you chose to extend the reservations, it would extend that, and it would also still copy the block. So, for example, if you had 15 rooms contracted, you had 13 rooms picked up, you chose to extend the reservations, it would move that 15 contracted to the next day as well. But it would also do the same if you chose to not extend the reservations, and it would still contract those 15 rooms for that next day. But with the new logic we introduced when we extend the reservations, it's only going to look at the pickup, obviously, because it needs to extend the reservations. But now when I go back to my block details here, on that next day that I added, I can see that it still has 7 reservations picked up because it was from the night before, but you'll notice I had 9 contracted. My contracted room matches my pickup. It still stays at 7. And then if I choose to not extend the reservations, if I move it to the 11th here, and I choose to not extend the reservations, it's just going to add the date to it, but there's no inventory attached on that last day. I can see the last day here, and there is 0 rooms inventory. And that's going to cover the enhancements we have for Rover 5.11. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Justin, for any questions that anyone might have.
Thanks a lot, James. I would now like to turn the floor over for questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. So looking at the queue, I see we do have a couple of questions. The first one asks, my hotel belongs to a multi-property environment. What happens if I try to merge a company card that has a reservation at one of our other hotels?
That's a great question. It's going to look at all properties. So for example, if you're at one hotel and let's say you have a company card for Google, and at your hotel you have no reservations for Google, but at another hotel that's in your multi-property environment, they do have a reservation. It's not going to actually let you merge that. It's the same for guest cards as well. If you have a guest card that doesn't have a reservation at your hotel, but at another hotel in your company, they have one in the future, it's not going to let you merge that guest card.
Excellent. Second question, is there a way to tell who merged a profile?
Yes, there is. If I look at my front desk profile here, I go to the guest and find my profile or my guest card. In the activity log, it's going to show you who merged these profiles and when they merged. This will actually show up on travel agency and company cards as well. So it shows you who merged it and what time and what date they merged that.
Excellent. Very good. So I'm seeing one more question in our queue. If you do have any additional questions, you might want to take the time just to type them out now. But the last question I'm seeing at the moment is there a way to prevent certain room types from being available for the hourly module?
Actually, there is. You can prevent room types and room numbers. Obviously, on the rate code for your hourly rates, you're going to set up the room types that you want to set that rate for, but you could even limit by room numbers. By default, when you activate the hourly functionality for your hotel, your room types are going to have a new checkbox here for available for day use. By default, everything's going to be checked, but you could uncheck them if there was a specific room type you did not want available for the day use. Additionally, if you wanted limited your inventory that you allow for your hourly reservations on the room numbers themselves, there is a checkbox that you could uncheck for available for day use, and that room number will not be available. So if it's something that you're interested in rolling out, but you kind of want to take baby steps and just do like 10 rooms at first, we could do that for you and make sure that you only have 10 rooms available for it. Similar to room types, when you activate the hourly functionality for your hotel, it will default to check every room, but you would just need to go to each room and uncheck that box for the rooms that you did not want to allow for that.
That is certainly a useful sub-feature. So I'm not seeing any additional questions in the queue. If you think of any questions after the presentation is over, I am going to be putting my email address into the chat box. And you should be receiving that right now. My email address is jderise@stayntouch.com. That's just jderisi@stayntouch.com. Feel free to ask me any questions that you might have after the presentation. I'll do my best to get them answered. This presentation has been recorded, and we will distribute the recording within 24 hours. With that, James, I'd like to thank you for your insightful presentation. And of course, I'd like to thank all of the audience members for choosing to be with us this afternoon. Thank you all for coming and have an excellent afternoon. Thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.